Recordings in progress. Good evening, y'all. This is Code Platoon. Evenings and weekends, Foxtrot cohort. I'm your host, Jordan West. This is week 1, day 2, how to talk to LLMs. What's an LLM? Vincent.
Language learning machine.
Language learning machine.
I don't know.
Are you sure? Are you confident? That's okay. Does anyone know what it actually is?
Large language model.
There you go. You know, language learning machine is a good guess because you could do that with it, I guess. Yep, large language model. I don't fiddle with these too much for code. I think they're super fun to play with. But in general, they inhibit a lot. They're good for learning. They're good for getting started. But especially for kind of a newer developer, you got to use a little bit of caution with things like this, like ChatGPT, like GitHub Copilot, like anything that does a lot of work for you. Real quick rant in my feeling about tools, especially Visual Studio Code plugins is kind of one of the biggest annoyances for me as an instructor. If a tool does something that you can't do on your own and you don't quite understand what it is it's doing when it's done, it's not cheating. That's just a tool that's not designed for you. If you've got a plugin on Visual Studio Code that writes a bunch of boilerplate, and by boilerplate, I mean basic get started, here's all the templating stuff that you need to write some Java. If you can't do that yourself, if you're not sure what line by line it's doing, you're not you're not who that's built for. That's built for people who have done that 500 times and are sick and tired of doing it. It's built for somebody who can look at it, see when it's wrong, and know what to change on it. If you're using something to help you write code, if you're using a plugin to format, to connect things, to run your code, you got to know what it is, that it's doing behind the scenes, because trying to fix 2 or 3 layers of something when you're really just trying to write some scripting language can get very frustrating, and it's difficult to fix. And if you don't understand really what's broken, when you do fix it, you don't know what it was that was broken in the first place. So you don't even have that confidence that you get from fixing a problem in the first place. That's my feelings on it. If I catch anybody using that green run button on Visual Studio Code and they can't explain exactly what it does under the button, I'm also gonna mail you lice or fleas. We teach running from the command line generally for our lectures and stuff, and I kind of expect y'all to do that because Visual Studio Code's got a lot of cool ways to run code, but if you don't know why it's running it, when it's running it, you're gonna run into a lot of problems with file systems and stuff. I maybe should have done that before the lecture, but I think it's on topic. But let's get started. This is a long lecture here. There's a lot to read. You really could probably read it yourself. I'm not going to add a ton of extra information here. I guess I could answer questions, but really, truly, and honestly, this is also applicable to how to Google things, which is something you get really good at in this line of work. So I do like at least the lessons it's kind of trying to impart. But there we go. If you look at this, this is preheat the oven. I can't believe I have to say this. Sear those steaks because someone had to compensate for your lack of taste, yada, yada, yada. If you were to ask ChatGPT how to cook a steak, this probably is not what you'd expect. You'd expect something a little bit more vanilla, a little bit more straightforward, by the books. What this is a highly aimed response. This isn't just how did you cook steaks. This is a bunch of bullet points that we asked our response to give us back. And we're going to talk through, I guess, the importance of knowing how to do that. And yeah, maybe how to formulate questions. There's a lot of, I guess, not a lot, but it's kind of a newer thing. But there's a lot of ways of thought going around, like how to interact with LLMs to make them really work for you and how to make them code in ways that you want them to code if you are looking up code. Importance of thoughtful questioning. That's a quote. You've probably been told at some point in your life there's such thing as a bad question. Sure, about as objective, and this sort of statement has usually been made in context with goal is to encourage others to ask questions. But what makes a bad question in terms of LLMs? It's formulated in a way that the LLM is not going to give you back what it is you're looking for. Asking something like, how do I do FizzBuzz in Python? You'll get back a solution to the common challenge FizzBuzz, but you may not get it in the way that you wanted. Or you might just say in code, and it'll probably give you to Python. It seems like it likes to default to Python a lot, but you want specifics. You have to be specific. Again, this is a weird lecture because I don't want to just read it out to you, but I do want to at least talk about the concepts. Not a fun lecture. Concept 1, breadth versus depth. Take a moment to consider the scope of the output you're looking for. Are you looking for a quick generalized answer, or do you need something in very particular? In LLM prompting, learning models can be influenced by a classification of prompts being either 0 shot, 1 shot, or few shot. You can remember those. Doesn't really matter. Understand the concepts. 0 shot prompting allows models to return generalized results by omitting example data. The others, more questions, more follow-up. So what is a basic prompt writing technique? Prompts are the key to unlocking the value potential of LLMs and AI. If what you give is what you get, then you can flip this around as a starting point. Let's compare a prompt in 3 stages. Prompt 1, how to cook steak. You put this into ChatGPT, this is roughly what you should get. I have it pulled up over here to show you, but I think that's kind of silly. Let's just do it because I did pull it up. Type it in, and it starts writing this out in real time. Cool. And maybe that's what you wanted. But we're going to go into more depth on. By the way, mine looks different than this because it is auto. It's building it real time. So a little long, full of generic information. Let's ask for something shorter. Write a paragraph form summary on the different ways to cook steak. Very different kind of prompting, much more specific to perhaps what it is you want. And as you see, ChatGPT would return something a little bit more concise. It really cares about the specifics of your prompt. If you want a simple answer, then by all means, ask a simple question. LLMs are capable of producing a variety of responses, and the amount of detail generated is influenced by the amount you request. Ask yourself first what your end goal is. Are you looking for a summarization? Do you want a list of results? Would you like examples or a step-by-step process? As a programmer, one of the fundamental elements of writing code is always understanding the data types you're working with. Prompt engineering shares these concerns. In the context of summarization, what tone should the writing take? Who is the intended audience? What component will the summarization be used for? If you're building an application prototype and you need a block of creative copy, ask the LLM for the output as creative copy. Good stuff. This is another useful piece. So for basic prompt writing, setting limits can kind of box in the answer you're getting. So write a paragraph form summary as creative copy promoting a particular fictional celebrity chef, different signature methods for cooking steaks. You can also feed ChatGPT all this kind of junk. So let's apply some additional rules, and lay these things out. This is great. Chef's fictional. I like this bullet point. If you were using this to generate code, you do need to specify the things that are probably variables, stuff that wouldn't be hard coded. You want to, make sure the information is omitted from their answer, or else you've got more work for yourself when you go to transpose it. Yeah. So ChatGPT will do that. Very fun, very riveting. Technique 3, provide deeper context. Not always going to be looking for a summary. If your goal is to most effectively leverage the power of AI, you should have an idea of how to ask it to generate other output types, such as lists, tables, code blocks, graphs, etc. keeping techniques 1 and 2, you can ask for an output to be a particular language. You can also ask for output to avoid using a particular syntax or method. This is topical. Oftentimes, obviously, you're going to want things in a specific language. But if you get limitations of what you're allowed to do, definitely worth putting into your prompt as well. Notice they asked specifically for table. They wanted to see this in a table, and they specified what columns they wanted. Again, you could just ask ChatGPT, hey, give me a table of, stuff. I think it would really struggle with that. In fact, I'm a little curious of, well, actually, I'm gonna have to do some of this. If I were to copy all that in here and then specify, oh my goodness, I swear I work on computers all day long. Oh no, where'd the table go? Yeah. I don't know what'll happen if I don't provide columns. Can you get something similar, or is that gonna be too much? Yep, see, I mean, it can do, they can figure some stuff out if it wants to. It's kind of struggling with what to do with the content. But yeah, if you do want specific columns, specific things, call that out. This is a fine example. I like it. Explaining, hey, if you, I don't know, think about your information in columns, I guess, if that's what you want. 5 elements of a good question. I would like to see a lot of this transfer over to just like any kind of search engine. But that is a skill that you will develop as well all the time. Shoot, to like within the last week at work, I have struggled to find something, message my manager and say, hey, I can't Google this. Can you formulate this question in a better way? Not so hard early on when you're, looking up how to write something, or sorry, how to print to the terminal in Python. That's an easy question. But when it starts getting more complex, like working in a framework, how do you print in Django is not going to give you anything. How to print to the screen with Django will, explain how to print in Python, but you really have to be very specific, such as like how to, write standard out from this function into the server's terminal or to a file. Question formulation is something you're going to get better at throughout this class and throughout your entire time as a developer, I think. Or you're just going to always have to ask people to Google stuff for you, which I deal with on a daily basis because I'm kind of a support kind of desktop role. 5 elements of a good question: role, task, background, example, output. I do like this. Giving examples of what you want is great in LLMs. It's also great when someone asks you to do something. On the flip side of this, if you're ever in an interview, and we'll talk about this later, always ask for example and output of what you want to see. LLMs find it useful, and you will too. Most of the time when you're presented with a problem, it's very useful to see what the information going in is and what the information going out is. Useful to you, useful to an LLM. So saying, hey, I need this to make a call and present information, get that done. A great question to save yourself a ton of work is, yeah, what does the information you're giving me look like? What does it return look like in an ideal world? Let me work around that. Build yourself some boundaries to work within, and do this for LLMs as well. By instructing the LLM to assume a particular role, you can directly influence the voice and tone of the output, as well as framing the perspective from which the data may be presented. Task refers to the overall objective, serves to anchor the output of the LLM. Background can influence the voice or tone, tone output, similar role, but this time through specification of intended audience. You all know what an example is. Output is ultimately an elaboration of technique one, which is to be specific. In this element, you can provide additional context. Let's try really turning up the heat. Incorporating the 5 elements is a good question to provide deeper context. So you can straight up provide that key value pairs as a prompt, which it responds very well to. So you can set a role. You're an opinionated, pompous, world-renowned celebrity chef. Task, step-by-step instructions in a variety of ways. But I want you to be condescending and rude as it offends you that I, the user, do not already know your methods. Background, great. It explains who this response is supposed to be going to. An example, first step to preheat the boiler, and I die a little on the inside having to spell this out for you, does kind of set the tone for, the responses you'd like to see. And then output, again, being specific like we used before, give me a table. These are going to be the columns. And the output looks something like this. Funny output. Brace yourself for culinary enlightenment that is about to unfold. You look through all of these, and yeah, this is a jerk. Unnecessarily mean. But yeah, see, cool output. Very difficult to, you wouldn't just get this by, saying, make me a steak in ChatGPT or any other tool. But using these prompting techniques, you definitely can. Beyond that, basic prompt writing technique 4, iterate and refine. As demonstrated above, be prepared to refine your prompt. So notice we didn't just tell you how not to do it and then how to do it. We work through each prompt building upon it. That's kind of how you'll interact with these is say, hey, yeah, I like that response, but that's good. Thumbs up, please add this, please do this. Iterate and refine, and know when to move on. If you're not getting what you want from an LLM, either you started bad and you've given it a bad base, and continuing to iterate on that is not going to get you anywhere, or you're kind of asking it to do something that it's not going to be able to handle. Concept 2, chain of thought prompting. This kind of talks through leading it. Something like this can really throw off a machine. Saying, Roger has 5 tennis balls. He buys 2 more cans of tennis balls. Each can has 3 tennis balls. How many tennis balls does he have now? The answer is 11. So cafeteria, 23 apples. They used 20, bought 6 more. How many apples do they have? In this instance, it got that wrong, because whatever the LLM did between here and here, it didn't really understand that it needed to be taking these numbers, multiply them together, and work. And you're not giving it the chain of thought. So in a proper way to do this, Roger started with 5 balls, 2 cans of 3 tennis balls, each. Or sorry, 3 tennis balls each is 6 tennis balls. 5 plus 6 equals 11. It's showing you, hey, here's the question. This is how I've walked through it. Now you solve this one. And that often can be a lot better for an LLM. So much like giving an example, this is similar, but it's more of a chain of thought kind of prompting technique. Any questions about anything we've covered up to this point? I know this is a little just me reading it, and it maybe seems a little simple logically, but that doesn't mean having a question about this is dumb. This is some high level, hard to get your hands on topics. Here's another example. The odd numbers in this group add up to an even number. Answer. And so we look at the odd numbers, 9, 15, and 1. 3 odd numbers added together are not going to be even. Answer. Adding up all the odd numbers, 9, 15, 1 gives 25. Answer is false. So then you ask it this question. ChatGPT, adding all the numbers, yada, 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 41 gets it. It's false. It's easy for it to follow that line of thinking if you explain why an answer is wrong, rather than just, no, that answer's wrong, no, that answer's wrong, don't give me that, explain to it what it did incorrectly, and that'll help you formulate your answer a bit. This is another concept, LLM and prompt drift. And this is kind of where I went with basic prompting writing technique. Know when to move on is with prompt drift. If you've started in a bad spot, continuing to work and iterate on that same response is going to oftentimes kind of get you nowhere. What this is saying, pick it out. I hate just reading the whole thing, but it's possible for LLMs to return different results to the exact same prompt, usually if a significant amount of time has passed between the submission of these prompts, or if other aberrations are introduced into the prompt chain and between the original answer, repeated prompt. Oh, also, the longer time that you've not given it positive feedback for the stuff it's giving you, an LLM will kind of start thinking it's moving in a different direction, or if that wasn't good responses. So what this is kind of talking about is staying positive on the feedback, pointing it in the right direction. These things can happen. Also, if it's going the wrong direction, you can't wrangle it back in, just start over. It's kind of what this is talking about as well. If you've given it, error cascading is if you've given it a response that isn't quite right, you didn't give it feedback in a way that it was useful to it, or not technically correct to your answer, it is going to eat that up and continue, chewing on that. Like if you say, hey, give me the colors of the rainbow, and it says like blue, but you're thinking of a different rainbow and you say no. But then later you're like, oh yeah, I guess blue's right. You're going to introduce basically that bug in there, that logical issue. So you do have to ensure that your feedback to an LLM is accurate every single time, or else you're going to kind of have to restart or, figure out where the issue was. In conclusion, yep, as you may have guessed, we tried to get ChatGPT to write this entire lecture for itself, had quite a few issues with it. It has this kind of difficulty explaining concepts about itself. But we did get a nice little breakdown and worked with it from there. I think this is a good starting point for where this lecture began. But these are not concepts I want you to deeply memorize, tattoo on your hand, and recall. Just kind of think about these concepts. You will use them for the prompt evolution challenge today. You don't need to know these, have them in your head when you're using the LLM. I just want you to kind of think about them while you're working with it, and hopefully build some good practices around using these. Some of y'all may not use LLMs. Some of you may have logged onto it for the first time today, and some of you may run into this course fully expecting to be leaning on them heavily, and will continue to do so. Doesn't really matter, but we have to address them. We have to talk about them a little bit and help where we can, because we can't avoid whether or not y'all use it. And we definitely can't say don't use it, because we can't, verify that you didn't. So that's what this is about. Oh, all right.